Hi, and welcome to today's online SpecDD training session. My name is Charles. I'll be your online instructor today. Today's lesson is going to be over the benefits of burndown charts and whether we have time remaining versus point-based burndown charts. Some of the advantages to both and kind of an open discussion about which ones might suit you and your team or your company. So a quick rundown of what exactly a burn down report is. For those of you that aren't practicing Agile or would like a refresher, a burn down chart simply is a chart displaying the progress of the remaining tasks that need to be done for a particular sprint iteration. The length of the burn down chart, the x-axis, will be simply the days of the sprint. This current slide shows 21 days, meaning that the current sprint cycle for this particular chart is just a little over 4 weeks, 21 working days. Okay? The standard burn down charts for typical sprints are usually 2 to 4 weeks. So you might have a 10-day burn down chart, you might have a 15-day or 20, 21-day burn down chart. Okay? The y-axis is the remaining amount of effort. For this particular example, we are using time remaining, so the metric is in hours. Burn down charts will always start with the upper left corner. And the ideal burn down progress, as represented by the green line, is a straight downward slope from upper left to lower right. At day 0, when the sprint is going to begin, this should be the maximum number of tasks assigned to the sprint, and the completed tasks, denoted by the orange bars, should of course be 0. None of them should be completed. The remaining effort should be ideally at the highest level it's going to be, again, upper left, and the remaining tasks, since they are all remaining, they're all still open, again, will begin in the upper left. Now, I'm going to cover a scenario. Of course, it's going to be ideal. As the days progress, as the sprint progresses, we will work on our tasks, and as our tasks are completed or worked on and the time remaining is diminishing, then the chart will show this by going in a downward slope to the right. So you'll see on day 1, our remaining effort drops from about 225 to just a little around 220. For day 2, not a whole lot of difference, drops to maybe 215. And on day 3, you'll see a more significant drop down to below 200. Meaning, by day 3, we have whittled away about 20-something hours. We have worked on this for 20-something hours of effort, and we have about 190-something and change remaining for the rest of the sprint. Now, that of course would be the ideal progress every single day for the sprint iteration. However, ideal is rarely achieved in the real world. So, can we add additional items to the sprint? Kind of a tricky question. You can. There is nothing, of course, stopping you, but best practices for SpecDD do suggest not to add anything. Can one item, one task that's already been added, increase in remaining effort? And yes, of course, this is something that happens quite often in a typical sprint iteration. Let's say a developer is working on their task. Day 1, no problem, they knock off 8 hours. Day 2, again, no problem, 8 hours. On day 3, they find out that, wait a second, this task, maybe something came up, maybe the implementation, the code that they were writing didn't work as smoothly as they thought. They realized that they were missing something from the original spec, and now they need to go back and recode certain items. The time remaining could then very likely increase for that particular task. This you'll visually see extremely easily in a Burndown report. If you'll take a look between day 4 and day 5, you'll see that the darker blue line has gone up above 200 hours of remaining effort. This indicates that the developer, the team, actually, this is for the entire team. The team, somebody on the team realized that their remaining effort needs to be increased instead of decreased. Now, as far as this chart goes, the remaining tasks, denoted by the light blue line, have not gone up. Okay, so that means that the sprint still has the exact same number of tasks remaining. No new tasks were added, but the effort required to finish that same number of tasks has, in fact, been increased. Now, how is this really utilized to help improve our team in SpecDD? Well, this really helps a team to be self-driving. Okay? What does that mean? Self-driving, motivated to complete their items as quickly as possible in the sprint iteration. Okay? How do they know that they're falling behind or that they need to work a little bit harder? They can very easily access this Burndown chart at any point in the iteration. Okay? This sample shows an iteration has already been completed. But imagine that we're only on day 4, or actually day 6, and they quickly take a look at this Burndown chart, which grabs all the data from DevSuite and displays it really dynamically in time, in real time. They'll notice that, well, this bump up was caused because, hey, I was a developer that needed to, that something was incorrect and that I really need to, had to recode something, so that increased my time remaining, and now I'm kind of adding to going in the wrong direction. Right? The sample Burndown, the Burndown chart is increasing instead of decreasing. Well, now I know that, hey, when I come in tomorrow, I really got to buckle down and work on that item. You know, I don't want to be the one that is causing my team to miss their estimates. I don't want to be the one to slow down my team. Now, if every individual, if every member of this team contributes, you know, realizes this and motivates themselves based on the data in the Burndown chart, then it really helps build an efficient and self-driving, self-motivated team. Now, going back to the tasks for this sample Burndown chart again, ideally, we do not want to add tasks into a sprint that has already begun. Okay? These tasks should not be easily created and should not be easily added in. Do emergencies arise? Of course. SpecDD does allow for tasks to be added into a sprint. It will, of course, reflect on the Burndown chart. This is not something that really anybody can restrict you, no matter how much the principles say that it should be done. But again, ideally, in SpecDD, tasks themselves should not be, new additional tasks should not be added to a sprint. The remaining effort, however, of course, will go up quite often. So, in a more data analytical view, we have our chart here using time remaining. We have our multiple stories 1, 2, and 3 that were assigned to this sprint. Tasks 1, 2, and 3 under story 1. Then day 0, our initial estimation were 3 days, 2 days, and 2 days. Okay? What exactly is this estimation worth? Do we have any idea? What are we basing these estimations off of? If we have a new member to this team, and they are simply given a description of a task that they need to do, they have never done this type of work before, they have nothing to relate it to, they have nothing to base their estimations off of, quite honestly, this estimation is worth nothing. Okay? There is no basis for them to estimate that this item is going to take 3 days. Now, for a team that has worked multiple sprints, that has worked together for multiple iterations, they understand how the stories are written, they understand how the tasks are broken down from the story, they know, based on past experience, what something like this, they have done something like this, so they know what something like this would estimate, then these estimations are worth a little bit more. Okay? For these individuals that have this experience, we can definitely trust their estimation straight off from the start, and you should typically not see them change much, deviate much from that original estimation. Now, for those new people, those inexperienced, the estimation needs to be updated on a daily basis, because as they build their experience, that's how their estimations become worth more. Okay? So from day 0, let's go with an inexperienced person. They go and they estimate 3 days. Okay. On day 1, that should of course go to 2 days. Right? They've spent 1 day on it, so then 2 days remain from the original 3 days. Now, on day 2, if the estimation was still on track and correct, this would be shown as 1 day. However, for this particular task, it's not. It's still stuck at 2 days. This could be because the original estimation was incorrect, simply was not done correctly, or it could mean that this developer was pulled off to another task and so did not have any time to work on task 1. Now, the reason I bring up this example is to demonstrate how just because task 1 does not go smoothly 3 days, 2 days, 1 day, does not necessarily mean that the estimation was incorrect. You need to take a look at the overall picture for a Burndown chart to really be useful, to be able to use the time remaining to derive accurate data. So for that, we could see that 3 days, again, overall picture. So for this example, we have story 1, we have task 1, task 2, task 3. Let's say one developer is assigned this entire story 1, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. Now, going back to that example, how should we read this chart? Well, our total days are then 3 days, 2 days, and 2 days, meaning 7 days in total. Okay. When 1 day passes, we should from this total be able to subtract 1 day. Okay. In which case, on day 1, that is correct. We have 2, 2, a total of 6 days remaining. On day 2, however, we encounter an anomaly. Day 1 and day 2 seems like there was no change done. So we still have 6 days remaining. So again, the estimation may have been correct then, but on day 1, while they're coding, they may have discovered something additional that needed to be added. Or there may have been a problem with their current progress and it may have stalled. Okay? These are very important areas where a dev team needs to focus on and be able to figure out what exactly is causing these delays. So a Burndown chart is very useful even during a sprint. It's a great tool for reviewing a sprint once it's over to discuss the obstacles, the hurdles, why certain areas were stalled. But it is also a great tool during a sprint for the team to self-check themselves and to make sure that things are progressing smoothly. Now, this is using the time remaining. SpecDD really encourages for time remaining to be estimated, updated with the time remaining efforts every single day. So let's pause real quick and take a training poll. For those of you that have practiced some sort of Agile or even SpecDD, are there any particular reasons why you like time remaining based Burndown reports? Could be possibly because it's a little bit easier to practice, especially for a team that's just starting Agile. Could be used to predict the remaining efforts of a team to finish a sprint more accurately, since it is based off of a specific hour metric. Time remaining helps to reflect each team member's true ability and capacity, right? Because they are estimating based off of their own experience and skills down to the hour. So they should really be able to measure that. Okay, it's a very, very analytical metric. When all the team members start to update this time remaining daily, the Burndown really becomes a good indicator, able to predict when all their work will be done. Again, this is based off of every team member effectively and cooperatively updating their time remainings. If you even have just one individual who waits, who doesn't update, 2 days before the sprint's about to be done, oh, I forgot to update. He goes in, he goes, well, a lot of these did take a little bit longer than I thought, and he adds in a whole bunch of hours, then your burn down is going to have a huge spike 2 days before the sprint's over. Okay? And the other team members will be, they take a look at it, will be wondering what's going on. I thought we were on track. I thought we were going to finish the sprint on time. And then they have to go and find that team member. They have to discuss it. They might need to reorganize and reprioritize and help him out. All, frantically 2 days before the sprint's over. Okay? But if every team member is diligent and updates this time remaining daily, then this really helps the entire team. And this, correlation, time remaining really represents each team's member ability to self-drive themselves. Okay, if again, I can assume that everybody else is also updating and diligently working and accurately reporting their time remaining, then this helps me measure myself and to self-drive and self-motivate myself. And if every single member of this team does that, then you have obviously a great self-driving team. Alternatively, you also have in SpecDD the option to use points for your burn down chart metric. Points, what exactly does that mean? They are not simply 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, although it could be that. Right? But that is a very basic metric and really, honestly, of not much use. Points are not based on skill either. These are not, well, this task is extremely difficult, so I need a senior level engineer, so let's give it 4 points. Not exactly. In SpecDD, the value of what the task is worth to the team are what the points are meant to reflect, to represent. Okay, meaning what? Meaning this task, it is a huge function. It is vital, it is imperative that we get this complete for this sprint. In fact, this is the main item that the sprint is meant for. Okay? Well, then the point value of that item needs to be extremely high. Okay? It could be 10 points, it could be 20 points. Again, the value itself is a little bit arbitrary. It's what makes sense to your team, to your company. Okay? Your value, 1 to 10 points, may very likely be different than my value in my company, 1 to 10. In this sample, we have day 0, and again, the burn down chart, again, a burn down really isn't a burn down if it's not sloping downwards towards the right. So even if you are using points, the chart starts in the upper left. X-axis is still the time in days of the sprint, and the y-axis is your measurement. It was hours remaining, now it's points. Okay. So for this particular sprint, we have assigned 150 points to the sprint. Okay. So we start off at 0 being completed and 150 remaining points. Now, the burn down here, ideal, again, it is very standard. For this example, it's simply 10 points per day. And your ideal velocity is how fast you're going up. That is in our velocity chart, so it's actually a separate metric, but it's typically the reverse of what the burn down would be. Okay. So you may have more points completed in one day than the other. Your remaining points, however, should of course go downwards. Okay. I have never seen it as smoothly as the ideal. Now, how do we estimate points? Point values are different for every team. The value of the points could, the most basic functionality could be just a simple continuous value. This is worth 1 point, this is worth 2 points, this is worth 3 points. It could be based off of the Fibonacci sequence, where the accumulation of the previous two represents the third. So you have your 1, 2, 3, then you have your 5, 8, 13, meaning that while these assignments, this task and this task, are simply the lower point values 1 and 2, the next one is worth 3. The next one is as important as the first 2. And the fourth task is as important as the first 3 tasks. The fifth one as important as all of the first 4 tasks, so on and so forth. The estimation of these points can be done by the Scrum Master, can be done by the Spec DD Master, or it could be estimated by the whole team. There is also an alternative style that I have seen used by a couple of teams through the means of poker cards. Okay? Your typical deck of cards. So it is a continuous value, 1, 2, 3, 4. However, once you reach the faces, the jacks, queens, kings, then you have a much higher point value system for those. So it's kind of almost a combination. You have your continuous value, and then once you get to the jack, queen, kings, you have not a Fibonacci sequence, but something that gives a more weighted value the higher you go. Okay? So if something is given the king card, that item must be done for the sprint, and it must be completed 100%. Okay. Queen, only a little bit below that. Jack, only a little below that. So on and so forth. Now, with points in Spec DD, this is different than from time remaining. Time remaining, just to remind you, is updated every single day. Okay. It needs to be updated every single day in order to be effective, in order to help drive the team, and in order to be useful. Points, on the other hand, there is no need to re-estimate every day. Okay? There is no reason you start on day 1 with 3 points. On day 2, have to re-evaluate and say, okay, well, I did 1 point, and let's finish with 2 points. Okay? The reason behind this, point systems for Burndown charts, they do not need to be estimated at such a granular level. Okay? And a point will not be the same as 1 day. Okay? That metric, that ratio does not mean anything. this is not a 1 point per day kind of system, because the values of the points do not coincide with each day. Okay. For a team using points, what they do need to do is update it when that task has been completed. Okay. So you might have task 1 that's 3 points. Whenever those 3 points are completed is when the developer, the programmer, needs to update that. Okay. So it is very possible that during your burn down chart using points, you have a sudden drop in the line, in the slope downwards. Okay. So again, point based, simply how many points you start with directly to close. Quick pause for another training poll. How many of you prefer using point-based burn down reports as opposed to time remaining? Some of you may find that it's easier to practice for the entire team when it's point-based, because it's not at such a granular level. There are no daily updates that are needed, unlike time remaining burn down reports. When the progress changes to work done, all of the points simply get finished. So it's a little easier to maintain, to update, to keep track of. It's very easy to predict when all the work will be done with the same effectiveness, simply points, and when those points are completed. It reflects a team member's productivity, how many points they can complete. And it can still also motivate a self-driving team. Okay? Not so much that everybody will see the time remaining efforts of other team members, but it motivates the team by displaying, well, this person was able to complete this many points, and this other member was able to complete this many points. It's a little bit of a competitiveness, which in moderation can be good for creating a better team. One of the slight disadvantages of point-based, if there are any issues, if members of your team are not diligent and they simply, because they're using point-based, do not estimate properly, or are more likely to slack off because there's no need to update daily, well, then this will definitely cause issues for your team. If that is the case, then SpecDD does recommend time remaining, simply to keep everybody on a day-to-day tracking. Okay. So question 7, again open-ended, just to provide a little bit of discussion. If you were a SpecDD master, today you are driving your team and you're the one that gets to decide which items, which method you would prefer. How would you practice? Would you use time remaining based only? Forget the point system, forget assigning values, forget assigning points to all the specific tasks? Or would you use point-based time only? There's no need to estimate hours. This is a high point value item, it's got to be done. Or would you use both? A combination. Take the best of both worlds, add them together. You have your day-to-day time remaining updates. You can see down to the hourly level, how you're progressing, and at the same time, you can see your point-based system. You can see which high point values are getting completed and if they're on track. If you use this method, it's very easy to see. One scenario could simply be your time remaining keeps on dropping. It seems like you're getting stuff done, but your point values aren't dropping as quickly. What would that mean? Just some food for thought. Or would you not practice a burn down report at all? To conclude this lesson, simply some food for thought. What does time remaining represent? Time remaining should represent the entire dynamic workload of the team? Or should time remaining only represent the implementation effort remaining? In SpecDD, when a sprint begins, are all of the QA testing tasks, the QA tasks within the sprint, the subtasks that we discussed earlier in a previous lesson, are those all created at the beginning? Can we accurately represent all of the time remaining at the very beginning? Typically, that's pretty impossible. Right? As we're developing, as the developer is creating, in the midst of creating the working software, writing the code for the working software, well, that's when these QA floaters figure out what needs to be tested, begins their testing. So can they accurately estimate and know straight from day one what kind of things they'll need to test? They can get an idea, but it is entirely possible that during the sprint, they realize there are additional things that need to be tested. And that's when SpecDD uses these QA floaters to create these subtasks under a development task. But isn't that going to increase time remaining? Should it? Alright, well, let's open up that, leave that for further discussion, whether online or even on our website, specdd.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts and kind of which Burndown report method you prefer, combination, depending on your team and your company. All right. Until next time, bye.